Okay.
Yeah, it's live.
Awesome. Is it working? Are we there?
Double check.
Yeah,
it's live.
Awesome. Is it working? Are we there?
Double check. Yep.
There's a weird delay, but I think we're in.
Live.
Awesome. Is it working?
Double check.
Oh God.
Yep. Looks like you're getting an echo though.
Now what do we do? Oh God.
Looks like you're getting an echo though. So how are you getting your echo? Oh, you muted yourself. Oh, you muted yourself. There we go. All right, now I can hear you.
I don't know why it's
saying. Oh, you muted yourself. There we go. All right, now I can hear you.
I don't know why it's saying.
Oh, you muted yourself. There we go. You might want to use headphones.
All right, now try that.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be the best idea. Oh, you muted yourself. There we go. You might want to use headphones.
Be right back. I don't know if these are charged or not. Okay, there is a headphone jack here though. So let me just go grab my headset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm back.
Yay!
Let's try this again. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're a little quieter. Which I think I could probably turn up my volume. Yeah, I'd say that'd be the best idea.
Okay.
How are we already still getting it echo?
Chaos Crew for the win.
Now it looks like you're getting some feedback. Oh, we cannot win.
That sucks. Where'd it go? Where did I go?
Yeah, I don't know if the headphones are working out either. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Oh, we just can't get it together.
Okay. These are charged or not. Okay, there is a headphone jack here though. Let me just go grab my headset.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how we're still getting audio.
Right?
Do you have another tab open?
Let me see. Let's try that. Close out everything else. Like bajillion tabs I opened trying to get all this sorted. Let's try that. Okay.
So that's the only thing I can think of, is that maybe you have a tab open for YouTube or something.
Right, I have the live stream tab open. Try this again.
Oh, on YouTube?
Should we close that one?
You can just mute it.
Okay.
And that way you're not getting feedback. Because that's usually what I do, is that I'll have StreamYard up on one tab and then I'll have YouTube on the other, so I can see the chat. But I mute.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do here. Like, I gotta be able to see the chat. I can see the chat over here too, though, so that's good. So we'll just go with that.
And then I actually think that your headphones are giving you some feedback. So you might be better off without them now that you have it muted.
Yeah, let's try that then.
Yeah, as soon as you pulled them out, the feedback disappeared. But you muted yourself.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Hopefully we're good now. We made it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't hear any echo. I don't hear any feedback.
It only took how long? 24 minutes. You know, we got it. We got this.
Well, I mean, now that you kind of know how to use StreamYard, though, it's going to be a little easier for you.
I was like, oh, because I was like, I'll do my research. I watched some, YouTube videos on how to do it. I was like, I'll just use Google Hangouts. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just use Google Hangouts. Done. Don't gotta worry about it. But I think we're good now.
Yeah, StreamYard seems to be pretty user-friendly, so
appreciate your patience and your guidance during these technical difficulties. Glad to have you here. Glad to have everyone here.
These trying technical times.
I told my husband, I'm like, even if you don't actually watch my live stream, just go put them on in the background. Make it look like I have an audience.
Yeah, I know my husband's not. He's just going to be doing his man cave thing.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm probably going to go game and play some Sims as soon as we're done here. But now that I actually have you here and we're broadcasting, I'm very excited because I have not met you in person yet, but you were definitely one of the people that inspired me to start my YouTube channel. So
I love when I inspire people.
So we get to talk and I get to pick your brain about witchy stuff.
Well, hopefully we'll meet in person soon if you're coming to Yule. So I'll be there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll make it to another gathering before then, but
yeah, Yule's the only one that I'm going to.
Hopefully at least by then, if not next year for sure.
It'll happen.
Right. I'm like stuck in the work grind right now. It sucks.
Yay.
That's why I like being able to do this kind of thing even more. Like mild-mannered office worker by day and wait, what does my shirt say? College-educated socialist witch by night. So
oh my God, that's an amazing shirt.
Yeah. Because I was kind of asking you before we got on here what your kind of background or knowledge of Wicca or like more traditional witchcraft was, because I had read a lot of books and kind of studied that, and being an English major, I always joke that I just used it as an excuse to sit in the library and read about mythology and folklore all day. So
honestly, like if you're a witch and also if you're a Norse pagan, those are very like homework heavy.
Yes.
Belief structures. So
it's the homework
you're in the right place. You're in the
Yeah.
right place.
Yeah, and that's kind of was the awesome thing. I'm like, finally, I have like something I can do that's relevant to all my interests.
Hmm.
And that's kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, where I just decided to take the plunge and be like, you know what? Screw it. I've been into magic and witchcraft and wanted to be a witch my whole life. So I'm just gonna do it. And yeah, start a YouTube channel so I can ramble about all this obscure nerdy stuff that I'm into that nobody else wants to talk about.
It's nice to have a sounding board for sure. That's the
Yeah.
reason why I have my channel too.
Right. I'm like, even if no one's watching, I can at least get those thoughts out of my brain and pretend like someone wants to hear them. So
Well, to answer your question about, my background in more traditional witchcraft or more structured witchcraft, like Wicca, because I would define that as structured
yeah.
witchcraft. I started out reading about Wicca when I was like, I think 14 or 15.
I
14,
think that was
maybe.
around how old I was when I first learned that it was a thing. I was like,
Me
wait,
too.
there's stuff that's not Christianity?
It started with the craft. I went over to my friend's house in high school, or I think junior high, and I saw the craft and I was like, wait, this is a thing that you can do? Whoa,
Right.
this is so fitting. So I scoured the library, my local library, and I read pretty much everything I could on the matter. And at that point in time, fixing glasses. At that point in time in the early 2000s, most of the stuff available was Wicca, because Wicca,
Yes.
you know, it came about in the 1950s, but then it had a revitalization boom, in the 80s and
Yeah, I
90s
feel
in
like when we were
particular.
growing up, like 80s, 90s was when there was that big, like, kind of new age revival, I would
Yes,
call it.
absolutely. Yeah. So, at that point in time, that was kind of really what was available to me. And it made sense, at least in having a patriarchal and a matriarchal deity
Yeah.
figure. But and I followed that for a while, but I never really clung to any sort of patriarchal deity. I was very uncomfortable with that concept. Even though I wasn't raised Christian, I still was brought up. I mean, we live in the US. This is a very
Yeah.
Christian dominated society. So
Right,
I
because
felt
yeah, I wasn't raised
uncomfortable.
religious either, but like I said, when I had a friend in high school who called herself Wiccan, and she loaned me all her books and stuff, and even though I wasn't really raised religious, we live in a society where that is still like permeated into the culture. We don't really hear about, even casually or just offhand, other paths that aren't Christian based in
Right.
some way, shape, or form. So I was like, wait, there's
And
something outside of that? I have options?
this is the thing. I didn't even grow up in the Bible Belt either. I grew up in a very liberal
No.
part of the country. I grew up on the West
Yeah.
Coast.
I grew up in
So
Wisconsin, so like my parents are like very lapsed Catholics, if anything. So
yeah, yeah, there's a lot of Lutherans here in Minnesota too. So
yeah,
a lot of Scandinavian immigrants.
someone in the comments just mentioned to ride a silver broomstick. I
Yeah.
just finished like To Light a Sacred Flame. I can't remember the exact title of it, but I just finished another book by Scarlet Ravenwolf and really enjoyed it. I'm going to do another live stream actually next week to talk about that. I liked her perspective on witchcraft a lot because it kind of did take much more hands-on and approachable, like modern day take on it. Because the thing that really turned me away from traditional Wicca or like traditional witchcraft was just kind of the pomp and circumstance of it all, of like, yeah, like I said, I'm a teenager, I don't have a job, and I am still living in a not religious household, but like still Christian mindset world. I'm not really going to go up to my mom and dad and be like, hey, I want to set up an altar in the backyard, is that cool? Like the neighbors won't mind, right? And not to mention, where am I going to go out and like afford all of that stuff? And yeah, like one thing I kind of just say a lot in my other videos is like, I'm like, I don't have the time or like mental capacity to memorize all of that stuff and like have the huge ritual with all the tools and the chants and the words. And so it was just like, that's too much. And it made it a little less like approachable at that
Right.
time.
Yep.
So I never really got into like, oh yeah, I'm actually gonna like sit down and practice this.
Yeah, when you're a kid in high school, it is really difficult to gather things, especially because in the early 2000s, that concept of kind of consuming more things for our craft was a little more prevalent than it is today. More people now today speak more about like you don't need that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I'm kind of glad in a way that I waited until now to actually come back into it and start wanting to practice some type of witchcraft, because they're like, not only do we have the internet and everything on there, there's just so much more information available, and just I think people are just becoming a lot more open and eclectic in their practices as a maybe as a
oh yeah.
result. I don't know, but yeah, there's just a lot more options. And I think, and it was nice to hear even like Scarlet Ravenwolf say, I have cat hair stuck on my nose now, but even in that book, it was nice because she kept saying like these these rituals and these fancy words, they're just kind of like extra spices in your recipe. You don't
Mhm.
need to make it that elaborate. There, you know, and she did mention like you'll find other witchcraft traditions and people that don't say, oh, you have to cast a circle before you do anything. And I'm like, that's nice to know. That's nice to hear and nice to know, because yeah, when you kind of only go into that like high art traditional Gardnerian Alexandrian Wicca, and it's just like, yeah, very well, yeah, the whole reason of this video is when you delve into that rabbit hole of what are all of these rituals, like where does this even come from, why is it so elaborate and
Right.
almost more formulaic in a sense. And because
Yeah.
yeah, it has been around since the 50s, and you know, supposedly stemmed from even way older traditions than that. But
Right. Well,
maybe I was like, maybe for that reason, since it's just been around for a while, that it's kind of become more formalized. But that's just kind of how it felt to me when I was first kind of getting into it.
yeah. The structuralization of even Wicca. I mean, Wicca compared to, for instance, what they're doing in the Golden Dawn isn't super structured.
Yes.
Like it's, but Wicca still ended up feeling too structured for me. And I think that's
Yeah,
just because
same
my
here.
Aquarian brain is like, I need to have free spirited. I got to be able to
Yes.
wing it.
Same here.
So most of my craft has always kind of been just winging it. There, I take inspiration from some things
Or
sometimes.
I like to say is I'm intuitive. I'm very
Yeah.
intuitive. Very
I
check around and find out, if you wanna put it that way, but
yeah.
yeah.
I I just say I'm a wing it witch. Like I'll, and sometimes I'll stick to certain structures like the moon phase and stuff. And I think that's more of a personal preference, just having a yes, like tying astrology into it, being interested in astrology and
Yeah,
having like I'm a Cancer moon, so I'm like
me
having the
too.
moon. Yay! That's what our big feels.
Yes, I'm a watery bitch, y'all, for sure. But that's kind of what another thing I really wanted to delve into in this video is just the overall importance of symbolism in witchcraft and magic as a whole. Because whether you want to go that super traditional route or not, if you're just yeah, kind of intuitive, we're still kind of making our own mental links to empower our craft, because at the end of the day, that's really what all of the tools and the pomp and circumstance of it all are about, is just kind of getting your brain into that right mindset to do some magic, you know? So
Yeah,
it's kind of like whatever helps you get there. And I'm like, even if though I'm not Wiccan, I'm like, I still have altars full of shiny objects and
yeah.
tools, just
Mine is
not the more
like you
traditional tools.
can literally see Freya right there. That is
Yes.
Freya.
So, like, don't get me wrong, I still like kind of, you know, having things to help me along the way,
Yeah,
and I think it's just a very human thing, you know, to
it
yeah,
is.
kind of get into the whole Da Vinci Code of it all, of just having symbols associated with concepts is
Mhm.
kind of a tale as old as time, no
I've
matter what you're doing.
I've always been very much for the you don't have to have things to make the craft, but to be perfectly honest, I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
So for me, being able to utilize those tools to step from mundane into magical has always been very helpful to me. I've always been fascinated by symbols and whatnot too.
Yeah.
Um, there are many people who don't like labels, and to me, I think in certain ways, they give a lot of power to things as well as symbols. So, my hands are covered in symbols. I'm
Yeah.
wearing a Mjolnir, like,
Right? It's like if it in some ways, it's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And
yeah,
so it's like, yeah, if the symbols and the meaning are working, then yeah, definitely stick with it. And I think, especially with like Wicca or just any religious tradition, those symbols that have kind of been carried throughout the years and throughout history, they do have a kind of more power behind them, I think, just because so many people put meaning behind things like that,
mhm,
like whether it be a cross or just the stop sign, like you
yeah,
know what that symbol means. You're
exactly.
gonna have that association with it in your mind, where like even if you're not driving, you'll see people put like a red octagon as a symbol on, just that means stop, because that's
Yeah.
just where your brain is trained to go.
I mean,
So
we see that on, like, emergency exits in stores and stuff because
yeah.
our brain is gonna know what that is, and I think, on the flip side of that, symbols can also be intriguing in that sense too if you don't know what they are,
Yeah, and
but
that's kind of what I was saying that got me kind of down this rabbit hole and made me want to do this video, was just I had finished reading a book that was about like astrology based tarot, and it
Mhm,
was, I think, whatever book I read was authored by someone who was like heavily into the Order of the Golden Dawn and Thoth Tarot and all of that. So that was cool. But yeah, just tying those astrological associations to the tarot and doing a more in-depth re-review and re-study of tarot, because it's something I've been doing for years and years, but not really been
right.
practicing heavily within the last decade or so. But even just with the standard Rider Waite deck, if you go and look at all those cards, it's just so deeply entrenched with symbols and symbolism that I just started, yeah, going down this rabbit hole of what do these all mean? Where does this come from?
So the
Because I
interesting
feel
thing
like a lot of the symbols in tarot also kind of carried over into traditional witchcraft. And I was like, why? Where does this come from? Why?
So the interesting thing about, like, the Rider-Waite deck versus the Thoth is the Rider-Waite deck does have all of the symbolism in it, like, all of the astrological associations in the cards, but they're not as obvious as the Thoth is. So, they're more just photographic in the sense of they're supposed to provoke more emotion than I think the Thoth does until you really study the Thoth, and then you're like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Yeah, because I
So,
don't know about you, like the guy I dated in college, we both went and got like tarot decks, and he picked out the Thoth, and I was like, good luck with that, man, because it is not beginner friendly.
I wanted to learn it since high school, and I was intimidated, and then
Yes,
it
intimidating is a good word for that one. But then
something
it
that
was created by Crowley, so what do you expect?
right, and I just recently started reading kind of the history on how that came about, and the really interesting part is that it was it was supposed to take 6 months. It took 4 years, and it was
Oh,
over the
wow.
course of World War II in London when bombs are literally falling on everybody's heads. And Lady Frida Harris stayed in London while this was going on, and she continued to paint all of the Thoth tarot. And she would have to pull Crowley back in from whatever rabbit hole he was going down to continue to instruct her on how he wanted the Thoth to live.
Hmm,
So it's just funny because, I mean, I look at it and I'm kind of like, this really ended up becoming more of her project than it was his in a lot of ways. Just
interesting.
because, yeah, that was really fascinating for me to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, yeah, speaking of Crowley and the Golden Dawn, because that was kind of the first place that my little rabbit hole led me, was just, yeah, what was the origin of Wicca? Where did that come from? And so, really, because I feel like really when people say Wicca, they're usually talking about Gardnerian Wicca, because that's
Yep.
the main one that everybody knows about.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so
the one that came
yeah,
about in the 50s.
yes, it says the Gardner's High Magic's Aid was published in 1949, according to my notes. And apparently he was also a member of Crowley's Order of the Golden Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, like, yeah, like right before Crowley died, he gave him his like credentials to go open up his own chapter.
Yep. Yeah, Crowley actually didn't live super long. Like, if I remember correctly, I think he was around my age when he passed away. If not, maybe just a little bit older. I could be
Yeah,
wrong, but and Lady Frida Harris didn't live super long either. And they actually died pretty close together, if I remember correctly. But I
interesting.
don't think either one of them actually saw the Thoth Tarot go to massively produced.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There was like a
Yeah,
chunk of texts that were produced.
I'd kind of read a little bit about Crowley a while back, but
Mhm.
not really too much into the Thoth or any of his actual like religious structure or anything. Just more about like him and his background, which is very interesting. If anyone ever
Yeah.
wants to go learn about him, he was an interesting character, to put
Yes.
it mildly.
There's a book called Understanding the Thoth by Lon Milo Duquette, and I would recommend that if you ever pick up the Thoth. The best part about it is that Lon Milo Duquette is very like kind of sassy about some of the things, some of the tangents that Crowley goes on in the Book of Thoth. Like he'll be like, he said this, I don't get it, but this is what I
I
think.
don't know what the hell this guy was talking about, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I appreciated the candor. Like I was just like, this is more relatable and pretty funny because what I would do when I'd read with the Thoth is I would pull and then I'd read from the White Book, and then I would read Crowley's passage in the Book of Thoth, and then I'd go and I'd read Lon Milo Duquette's passage on that same card, and I'd be like, oh, okay.
Sounds familiar. Yes.
Yeah.
The home with religion. Because
Yeah.
yeah, it was like once I fell down that rabbit hole, I was like, okay, we start with Gardner, and so he got the whole like Wicca thing started, and then that stemmed based on like Order of the Golden Dawn, which is actually full name like Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So that gets into like the whole Hermeticism tradition,
Hmm.
and so yeah, that was then further based on like Rosicrucianism and Hermeticism and like medieval alchemy and just all of these things, all of these like ancient, yeah, secret mystery cults and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
So it just takes you way deep down the rabbit hole when once I started getting into yeah, like where did all of this stuff get started from? Because I think yeah, even tarot is heavily based on a lot of those traditions,
Oh,
which is
absolutely. Yes.
from Kabbalah and all that kind of stuff. But then
Hmm.
it just was weird because they're still putting this like Christian lens over a
Yeah.
lot of
On some
it.
of it. Yep. Yeah, it depends on the card, but, like, I think you see that a little bit more in the Rider-Waite-Smith than you do in the Thoth, just because the Thoth
Yeah.
is, so much more esoteric, but you definitely see it.
Yeah, and not so much by the time you like get to the whole Wicca part of it, but yeah, definitely with like Rosicrucianism and all of that stuff, and some with like some of those Hermeticism things, because Hermeticism comes from Hermes Trismegistus and these like Greek like
Mhm.
Eleusinian mystery cults, but then it came to kind of evolved into from my understanding, like the whole Knights Templar thing, which became the Freemasons, and then basically Gardner and Crowley were like, if we can't be top tier Masons, then we're just gonna go make our own secret societies with all the
Oh,
cool shit that you guys
right.
let us do.
Uh, yeah,
And
and,
so, yeah,
honestly, like
and it was like supposedly Gardner, learned all of his stuff from like the Black Forest clan or whatever they were calling themselves, which was supposed to be like a very old witchcraft tradition. And then
I
some of
think
it I
there's
think was
a
just him taking his actual, in terms of, the actual ritual of it all and some of the, how do I want to say it? Like the words and the rituals and the things that they would actually do, I think heavily drew from like Masonic rituals and things
Yeah.
like that. So
Well, there's also, you know, in the 1920s, in the early 1900s, the whole spiritualist movement, like
yes,
that had a huge hand in Wicca.
transcendentalism.
Yeah. And I mean, that's
Yes.
when the
I think that
Rider-Waite-Smith
was
Act was published
the
in 1910
yeah, that
or
was definitely the
1909.
big starting of the whole movement, which I think
Mhm.
culminated in things like Order of the Golden Dawn
Yep.
and all of
Yeah.
that fun stuff. So
Yep. Yeah.
yeah, I think like you said, when we get to the Wiccan tradition, that was kind of where we first saw an alternative that was kind of more balanced in terms of it wasn't just patriarchal. We actually
Yep.
saw both a god and a goddess, which, yeah,
Mhm.
to my sensibilities, I was like, yes, this makes sense. We don't
Yeah.
just have men in the world, so why would we only have a male deity?
Yeah.
And especially when
And
women are the ones creating everything, but we only have a male creator?
yeah.
Let me
I always
explain
thought that that was
how that works. Yeah,
too.
it seemed very unbalanced perspective, so
Even as a child, and I remember I would be out camping and stuff, and I could feel what I now understand as the gods, and
yeah.
what I now understand as, like, the Landviti or the land spirits,
Yes.
but to me, I didn't know what it was, so I just called it, like, Mother Earth. But
Right,
I
and
was
there was
never
always that sense of,
personifying,
like,
you
there's
know?
gotta be some type of, intelligent design behind all of this because nature is just too awesome and beautiful and fantastic, and it's like I was just telling my husband today is, like, the whole pagan perspective of, like, whatever you need, whatever's ailing you, if something's wrong, like, there's a leaf for that. And like there's a leaf that'll cure that sickness or so I was like, who what are the chances of that kind of thing? And but yeah, and that kind of delves into the more like animist
Mhm.
perspective
Yep.
of it all. And yeah, I think from since childhood, you always had that sense of there's something more.
Mhm.
And this whole
Yeah.
Abrahamic religion story is just not cutting it for me.
Yeah. Works for some, doesn't work for me.
Yeah. But then yeah, Wicca wasn't quite it either, and I don't know if it was just too structured by the point that we came into it because it
I
had
think
been
that's
around for so long, and maybe it was designed that way. It was maybe by design.
yeah, I think it was, and for me, like, again, it felt too boxed in, which is so interesting because now I've definitely put myself in another box being Norse pagan, but
Yes.
it's like the community of being Norse pagan is just so there's so much you can learn. There's so I mean, this again, it's do your homework. And there's just so many different paths you could go when you're exploring Norse paganism. And each deity that you come in contact with kind of either has a different message for you, or how they want you to handle things, or they have something to teach you, or they'll point you in a different direction of just like, oh, I guess you can start learning about like Seder or
Or just that sense that it was interesting just to really get that sense of no, like these are beings with distinct different personalities. Because when I
Mhm.
first came into it, like I had studied Hinduism a lot, and that really opened my mind even more to just the whole concept of pantheism in general. And there was a lot behind that that appealed to me of just, oh, even if it just is coming from one all purpose, all powerful, like creator source, it's still broken down into these little individual facets that we can interact with and that our minds can comprehend. And so I was
Mhm.
like, maybe it's kind of like that. And then, yeah, I kind of got into Norse paganism and started encountering all these deities. And it was just like, no, these are very distinct personalities. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely kind of ironic because Wicca felt both too structured and also a little bit too vague in terms of it just going more with the general lord and lady or god and goddess, and
Yeah.
not really more specific than that. And so, yeah, when I actually met the Norse gods, I was like, oh, I'm actually feeling a connection here for the first time. Whereas I hadn't when I was in getting into Wicca and things in the past and trying to be like, well, yeah, if I wanted to work with a specific pantheon, what would I maybe be interested in reaching out to? But nothing ever really made that full connection of like, yes, I'm here, I'm real, I want to interact with you
Right.
until I met Freya. So yeah, now I'm like, I don't really want to box myself in. Like, yeah, maybe there are other deities from other pantheons, and I have, definitely experienced some of that. But at the same time, it's like I do kind of like having somewhere to direct my focus. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, yeah, I'd be all over the place. Like, let's research this and this and what's over
What's this?
here.
What's
Suddenly
this?
I have, yeah, suddenly I have 10 altars to 5 different pantheons in my house. Because I'm just a welcoming person like that. That's how I ended up working with Loki. So
Come in, come in.
yeah,
Yeah,
I was like, sure, why not? Come on in.
I have worked with other deities, but none of them came on as strongly to me as the Norse gods. But at least as like a whole, I've worked with specific deities that have come on as strongly on their own. But as soon as I started working with the Norse pantheon, it was like everybody and their mother wanted to just come in
Yes.
and hang out. And I was like, whoa, guys,
Well,
chill.
and for me, it was not just that, but especially with like Freya and Loki, also a sense that they had been there for a long time, like maybe since I was young, and it had just taken me until now to realize that was who I had been feeling the whole time. They were kind of like, oh, it took you long enough to realize it was me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually how I
But
feel about Hell in particular. I'm pretty sure she's been around for quite some time.
But yeah, once you kind of start branching away, and it's good to have, I think, still that basis and that background in Wicca and traditional witchcraft, because like, don't get me wrong, even though I'm not in there memorizing these full speeches and these rituals and doing all these things, I would say a lot of my own personal daily practice, and especially with things like following the Celtic wheel of the year and deciding what kind of, pagan holidays to observe, a lot of that is still heavily borrowed from Wicca.
Yeah, I was
And just
actually
kind
I'm
of,
glad you brought that up because I was
yes.
going to.
And even it struck me earlier today, I was like kind of sitting the other day doing a meditation with Freyr and Freya, whose names literally just mean Lord and Lady. So it's like
Yeah.
any Wiccan ritual that I'm doing that's for the Lady and the Lord can just be easily substituted with
Mhm.
Freyr and Freya. So it's like, that's kind of interesting
Mhm.
when you make
Yeah.
that connection. But
The wheel of the year is the thing, and it's funny because again we're talking like symbols. The wheel of the year is the thing that I really kind of clung to as I started to branch out from Wicca because I liked the idea of celebrating the flux and flow of the seasons because that's
yeah,
really how I looked at it. Even now, it's adapted quite a bit. In fact, the more minor sabbats I don't tend to celebrate as much now. It's really more the solstices and the equinoxes that I connect to the most. However, Samhain is a like big 4 day long thing in my practice.
yes. Halloween's always
So
been my favorite. So
yeah. So, because Samhain, I also observe Day of the Dead because I work with Saint Morte. So, I kind of do all of that all together. And then I think it's the second day of November is actually a day associated with hell. So I'm just
oh,
doing all this stuff with all the death deities like right around Halloween. And like death is a very big part of my practice and working with the ancestors, working with my beloved dead, communicating with the dead, all that kind of stuff. So that's a huge bubble all on its own. But then the only other one that I tend to gravitate towards sometimes is well, I was gonna say Ostara, but that's the equinox, so never mind.
yeah. Yeah,
Because
I
they
don't
used
know if
to
it
be,
was
yeah.
because I just started out uh, with, the whatever the Fellowship of Northern Traditions, where things were mostly being centered around the solstices and the equinoxes, or just kind of like you said, I don't really feel the need to go all out for some of the more minor things,
Mhm.
like Imbolc or
Imbolc's on my husband's birthday, so I just generally don't celebrate
yeah,
it because 'cause I'm more focused on him,
same
and
here.
it's in the time here in the winter where you are, like, clawing yourself out
Right. I'm
of
like,
the
what? There's
cold.
nothing to celebrate right now.
Yeah,
Everything's frozen and dead, including my cold, dead heart. Like, I'm not going outdoors. No one's doing anything.
yeah, it's kind of
But
a rough one for me just because I tend to be, like, really struggling with seasonal depression and trying to
it did hit
celebrate
me.
my
It hit me pretty hard this last winter. I used to like to think that I wasn't affected by that kind of thing, and then this last winter was like, nah, bitch, I got you.
Yeah. No, I was bad for me too, trust me. That's why
But yeah,
I
I think
got
just that
my apartment.
whole wanting to not only just feeling a connection to the cycle of the year and just the cyclical nature of things in general, but especially nature was just what really finally pulled me in and made me want to be a practicing pagan,
Yep.
because it was just like the world is on fire, like nothing is certain anymore, but I know that like seasons are still going to come and go on a relatively regular time scale. And like this is something relatively predictable that I can literally put some faith in is that the
Mhm.
sun's going to come up, you know? And
Right.
so, yeah, I was like, I really feel a need to actually acknowledge this and honor this in my day to day life. And
Mhm.
just, yeah, like connect more with nature and give back to nature because it brings me so much joy and comfort.
Right. I've gotten into cleaning up more trash when I'm out and stuff lately too. And actually, most of the time I'm hiking with my sons, so I'm trying to set a good example of showing them, like, we need to take care of our planet, and, sometimes they'll help me clean stuff. It's really cute.
Yeah. I
They'll be
think
like, "Can
that's
we bring."
kind of where the importance of symbolism in magic comes back into play, is because it's like even after you're branching away from those more traditional witchcraft symbols, because like for us or just me, like not being a Wiccan, I don't really use things like the pentagram. I'm starting to go back in now and like get more into like things like elemental magic,
Mhm.
because being someone that I'm like, well, I don't really feel a need to cast a circle and call in the four quarters and do a lot of that. But just from a lot of things that I've been reading, there'll be a lot of books that talk about like not just having deity altars in your home, but like elemental shrines or things like
Mhm.
that to the different elements. And I was like, that might be something I could get behind, and or just incorporating elemental symbols and elemental magic into my last house cleansing that I did was something
I
I'd
was
never really bothered with before. But it's
just
like,
about to say.
even if it's just helping my mind feel like I'm packing a little bit more punch behind that
Mhm.
cleansing, because I'm like, yeah, I got like all the elements working with me on this. So it helps your mindset. And so I think that's definitely especially the importance of symbolism when you're doing things like magic. It helps you hone your willpower and hone your consciousness to kind of focus on that objective or just
Mhm.
feel more powerful in what you're doing.
Right, it's a focal point. And one suggestion, if you wanna work with the 4 elements a little bit more, and you were mentioning house cleansing, is you can actually make, like, I would make, mojo bags that would represent the 4 elements and hang them from the directions that they're associated with
Hmm,
in the corners
that's a
of my
good
house.
idea. I think what I ended up doing, I use a mix of runes and Celtic Agam to make sigils that I'll draw on my windows and doors. And so I tried to kind of point different symbols to face the four directions and like incorporate elemental symbols into that too.
I've
So
done that
yeah,
with
there's all different
crystals
kinds
too.
of ways that you could do it. This last time, what I did was I had my big like seashell that I used as a bowl, and I put a candle in it. So the seashell was water, and then the candle was fire, and then the sage that I was burning was like earth, and then also air from the smoke. So I was
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, it had me feeling pretty witchy. I'm not gonna lie. So I was like, maybe there is something to be said for like kind of going all out and using different tools. Even though
Yeah.
I'm not a Wicca, like still bringing in the elements and just doing things that make you feel like you're stepping into your power as a witch, and you're like, yeah, I got this. I'm in control here. I know what I'm
Right.
doing now. I have elements backing me up.
Well, when you create more of that in your home, you are creating more energy for you to connect with. and more energy for, you know, your servitors, your deities, your guides, your ancestors, your, you know, beloved dead. um you're creating more energy for them to kind of come in and invite themselves in your home
Yeah.
and help you and guide you and stuff like that too. And I think that that's really important. And you know, even having an altar space, that is a huge symbol. It's a place for these
Yes.
spirits and beings to come and gather and be welcome in this space. And you know, that's, to me, that's detrimental to my practice. I need to have those spaces. It's also, again, shifting the mundane mind into the magical mind.
Yes, that's so
And
important. And
I
I
know
think
there are a lot
symbols
of
are definitely what helps us get there for sure.
exactly. And I
I
know
was
there are a
thinking
lot of
about
other
that.
parents who are like me, who are just like, mom brain.
Yeah, I mean, even just for me, of like, I don't have, I have cats distracting me, but just, yeah, like in general, I think it can be hard to focus, not just, you know, for like meditation or things like that, but yeah, even for spellcraft or just sitting at the altar and trying to communicate with deities, it's like your brain will look for literally any excuse to be distracted.
Oh yeah, yeah. It
So
drives
if
me
you
nuts.
can give it things to focus on,
Mhm.
is it's like whatever helps. So yeah, I was kind of thinking about that today. I've been kind of beating myself up lately for not really spending as much like one-on-one or quality time with like Freya or just at my altars as I would like. And so, you know, I feel like I should be doing more.
Oh
But
god,
you
I'm
know,
constantly
but then
telling
today I
myself
was
that.
just sitting, yeah, I was just sitting in my living room today and looked over at her altar and I was like, you know, I feel like just the fact that we've taken the time and attention to, yeah, as you said, carve out a space for them and welcome them into our home and have a dedicated space for these gods that have not been worshipped or had dedicated spaces made out for them in people's lives in centuries. I'm like, I feel like that's doing something for them, even if I'm not
Mhm.
there at it every day or like interacting with it every day. I'm just like, that's still an act of devotion and just maintaining, for me, maintaining that connection. It's
They
just the act of having that space is
they also
powerful.
don't have the time to be with you all the time either, you know?
Yes, I say it's like they're like the paintings in Harry Potter. Like you can't just
Mhm.
expect them to hang out in the painting
Right?
all the time.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, very much that. Sometimes I'll go in
Mhm.
and check in and no one's home. I feel like I always joke like I'm constantly getting Odin's answering machine.
Oh,
He's
me
never
too.
there.
The only time Odin really comes around is if he's got something
Yeah, usually he
really
wants to.
important to say, or if it's like winter solstice, because
Yeah,
that's when
when
he
he's
tends
like
to be like,
cruising through on with the wild hunt,
mhm,
just
yeah,
stopping by.
which is crazy because Odin's the one that started all this for me, and then it was just like, really, you're just gonna dip? But yeah, he hangs out on my altar too, and like the last time I really kind of was in contact with him was during the Iowa, ugh, midsummer. Like we were doing one of our rituals, and I happened to like look over and see him kind of standing on the edge
He
of,
likes to
I
do
was like,
that. Yeah,
I
I'm
was
glad
like,
that
oh,
not just
Odin's here.
me that has seen
Hmm.
that.
It's
Yes, he likes
nice
to
to
lurk
know.
and observe.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, that's kind of the sense I've gotten with him is like when I first set up my altar to him and was like, maybe I'll want to reach out to Odin. I like learning. He likes learning. Well, drop some knowledge on me, bro. And yeah, he dropped some knowledge on me, like just long enough to blow my mind and prove to me that he was real. And then it's like, yeah, aside from like checking in during like big Yule rituals or something, he's just kind of like,
Nice.
nah, yeah, I'm not here. He's got his own agenda, his own stuff to do. And
And
as
that's
my husband
another.
often likes to say, it's like, do you want to be on his radar? Are you sure? Because once you're on his radar, it's like, yeah, you're not coming
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, that's yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, like, you know, back to symbolism, one of the things that really helped me connect to Odin, and one of the ways that he represented himself to me, is that he basically was like Gandalf
Yeah.
because he knew that I would connect to that. And it's just like, okay. Okay. And I know that Tolkien actually based Gandalf off of Odin in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So it's just for me, that
It
was a
all
way for
comes
my
full
brain
circle.
yeah, for my brain to be like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, see, for me, he showed up as the Gandalf guy and was like, "Oh yeah, look, this is how everyone knows me. I'm the friendly Gandalf grandpa guy," and then immediately turned into like the Odin the Screamer and like
"Just
stole
kidding, I'm the
space.
god of war."
Yeah, it's like actually I'm also this, and you better be prepared for both. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Starts blasting metal music.
Pretty much, yeah, very scary, very intimidating. I was like, okay, yeah, you're definitely real, but holy shit, if you could not do that, that would be great.
Whoa, bro.
Yeah, if you could
Scaring the
not
shit out
scare
of
the crap
me.
out of me, scare me up out of my bed in the middle of the night, that would be great. But yeah, I think it's been cool also to see kind of like how we now have that we're traditionally associated with Wicca and have been carried forward and excuse me, even if it's something that like someone will just mention offhand and it's not even like formal lore, it just has like evolved through the like telephone process basically
Yep.
to now where it's like, oh yes, this is just taken to be accepted fact.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's like we're kind of getting into that point very early stages, I think, with things like Norse paganism, where it's like, yeah, like what colors would you typically associate with Odin? And a lot of people will often give you the same answers, and
Yeah.
so it
Yeah,
can be
it's
interesting to see those types of things building organically through the
mhm.
community.
Yeah. Like, I
Right.
associate Freya with, like, passionate colors, like red and,
Mm,
like, obviously amber because that's part of her lore, but
yeah.
also, like, pinks and stuff. I leave rose quartz by her all the time,
Yes. She
and,
has
like,
all my
Odin
rose quartz.
yeah, Odin is, like, forest green to me
Yeah.
and earthy
Yeah, like hunter
colors.
green, dark
Yeah.
navy blue, gray.
Yeah,
So
his
it's
prayer
it's
beads that I
interesting
made him.
how we've started making our own symbolic meanings and associations, and I think that's really the most important part and the most important thing that and powerful thing that we can do is make our own symbols and not just go off of what's coming from a book or yeah what 20 generations of traditional witches say or even what another Norse pagan says. Oh,
Right.
here are the colors associated with this god. It's like if you're like, well, like I don't know, I feel like my Odin is a soft boy and he likes lavender, and I'd be like, you know what? That's awesome. Like fuck yeah. Whatever helps you. For me, my big ones for Freya are blue and gold.
Okay, yeah, I like
Because
that.
I tie all of the Vanir to water and different
Mhm.
types of water, like Njord especially, but not only that, like also like the blue of the sky.
Yeah.
So yeah, blues and golds are big for me, and then yeah, different animals. We have different like common animal associations with
Mhm.
Norse gods. Like for mine is a hawk for
Mhm.
Freya. Growing up, for some reason, anytime I saw a hawk as a kid, I thought it was like a personal omen of like protection, like that hawk is watching over me. And then
So
I learned
funny
about
all the
Freya
pagan
having
things
a
he
falcon
did.
cloak, and I was like, Freya, was that you the whole time? So just different things like that, or like Loki and spiders.
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from. I don't have anything in traditional Norse lore to say like yes, Loki is spiders, but it's just a thing. And I was like, yes, this is my own association, Loki spiders.
I associate hell with moths, and at the Iowa gathering, we had given an offering to her, and then I was walking back up to the house, and there was this really pretty moth that I was able to kinda gently hold and stuff, and, um, John had come up behind me, and he's like, "What you got there?" And I was like, "Look at pretty baby."
I do like moths. I'm normally not a huge fan of insects, and especially spiders, actually.
Spiders is
Somewhat of an arachnophobe, but ever since,
I am too.
yeah, welcoming Loki into my life, I've been trying to get along with them better. As long as they're not too big and scary, I'll try to be a little bit more tolerant of the spiders. But yeah, it's just cool to kind of see people making their own organic symbolic associations, because that's very powerful. And like things that people in the community will ask a lot are like, hey, I saw this thing today, and I think it's a sign, and I was trying to connect with Thor. Do you think it's a sign from Thor? And honestly, I'll just tell people, like, if you think that was a sign, then yeah, like you know, if it's an important and it has important symbolic meaning to you, then that's powerful.
We had a thunderstorm roll through here a couple nights ago, and I gave an offering to Thor and was asking for his protection and stuff. And it's a thunderstorm, there's lightning going on and all that stuff. One would logically dictate that it's not a direct response from Thor. But to me, I really did feel like it was, just because of how it felt intuitively on me. Just getting the tingles and just kind of being like, okay, he's listening.
Yes, like, don't get me wrong, you have your sudden summer thunder showers that'll come up out of nowhere when it's hot and humid enough, but how often do you have your sudden summer thunderstorm will pop up right over my house, literally right after I went out there and did an offering to Thor in my yard, or something like that. Like, we get like a one little rain cloud that rains right over us for like 2 minutes, and then it clears up again. It's like, okay, come on now. Like magic is real. Come on.
Yeah. Like, basically, if you feel like in deep in that it is a sign, it's a sign. That's pretty much what I've taken it, because I've spent so much of my time just tossing logic at everything I experience, and it's completely suffocating my intuitive nature. And it's crazy that it's taken me into my mid-30s to finally do they have to yell at me? Like,
I wish it hadn't taken me this long, because yeah, I feel like we do feel a lot of that stuff intuitively when we're kids, like feeling a sense of animism, and that things around us in the world also have spirits and want to connect with us, or just that general sense that magic is real, and like the power of your imagination. And then slowly, as we get older, that's like beaten out of us. And then I'm like, even for me, I went on like a whole tirade about it. I did like a whole video about the importance of magical thinking, and not just symbolism, but just allowing yourself to believe in the power of magic. Like, that's really the most important thing you can do, and the crucial thing, because you can do all the spells and have all the bells and whistles and all the altars and tools in the world, but if you're sitting down and in the back of your brain you still don't really think that this is going to work, and like, oh, this is silly, and I'll still have those thoughts, be like, this is silly, magic isn't real. If anyone saw what you were doing right now, they would think you were crazy and stupid, and this ain't gonna work. And so of course it's not gonna work.
Those thoughts don't completely go away either. That's the frustrating part.
Yeah, it's still hard to wrestle with, even for me, like someone who's like always been into Harry Potter, fantasy, wanted to be a witch, like wants to fully embrace it. It's still hard to get that little voice out of the back of your head being like, magic's not real, what are you doing here?
I think it's also just, that's part of, again, societal conditioning. We're brought up in a Christian dominated society. Like, we're trained from a young age to think that this is crazy. And, again, like, that's where the power of symbols is so important, especially symbols that are sacred to us, sacred to our practices. That's why we've adapted wearing the Mjolnir as a symbol of protection, or a symbol of being Norse pagan. That's why I have the pentacle on my hand and the 4 elements. Like, this is all to remind me daily that I am a magical being, and I am a person that connects to this, and this is a big part of my life. In fact, I wouldn't be the person I am without it. So, I think that societal programming we're always going to struggle just because of where we live and how this goes. But it's the power of symbols is not to be completely downplayed, for sure.
Right. Yeah. I think we don't even realize how much it affects our consciousness, even just on a subtle level, like we were kind of talking about at the beginning with just, yeah, even everyday mundane things like, yeah, red means anger, red means stop, green means go, just different things like that, or then when they'll say things like, oh yeah, don't paint your bedroom bright yellow or you'll never be able to sleep. It's too much of a high energy color. You got to paint your room calming colors, because people realize that kind of stuff affects you on a subtle level.
There's a lot of psychological aspects to color too. So, there's been so many studies on it and stuff. My room's blue because it's my favorite color and it's what I find calming.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a really good point that symbols are very important for getting us in that frame of mind. And especially in that book I just finished reading by Scarlett Ravenwolf, it was talking a lot about how using those different things as tools to get yourself in that magical mindset, and almost like describing it almost like self-hypnosis of a sort. Like, you kind of gotta maybe trick your mind into getting to that place where you can believe that you're powerful and doing magic. So
if the brain does certain things like that for other things. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, when I was walking around with my bowl, with my candle and all my stuff doing my cleanse, I was like, I feel like a badass witch right now because I have all this stuff. And like the stuff's not important, but it does help, especially when you're just starting out, or if you do have trouble focusing, or if you want to be able to focus on something specific. I think being able to pull in those references.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because I was just reading a book about, magical protection and warding, and the author had suggested telling yourself that you're a badass witch, because if you're telling yourself that you're a badass witch that lives in this house, then there's a badass witch that lives in this house and no one's going to mess with you because you're going to be protecting that energy.
A lot. It's like you don't really need anything. I think I told someone at one point, I'm like, you could just go walk through your house blasting heavy metal music as a way to drive out the bad spirits with noise, if that's really what works for you. But it's really just about, especially if you're trying to like get something out of your house, it's really just about having that fuck off energy. Like, yes, I live here, you don't. Get out of my house.
I have literally walked around my house and just been like, get fuck out of my house. It's just, I don't want you here. It works. Well, we've been on for about an hour. I don't know how much longer.
Yeah,
how long you want your
the hour mark is about usually what I shoot for with these, and I feel like we touched on a lot of the stuff that I kind of had written down in my notes here, as far as just kind of a general recap of we went through the history of Wicca, and as far as that being where a lot of our modern day symbols and traditions come from witchcraft, and especially once you start getting into things like tarot and divination, and then from there I think just the importance of symbols even in our practice still today, and just being able to see how we're creating our own. It's cool. It's awesome. Cool. I like to see it. Things like wearing the Mjolnir. I would say is a big one that's become wildly popular just in the last like year or two.
And it's kind of become how we Norse pagans recognize each other. I've met other people simply by them wearing a Mjolnir and commenting on it, just starting with like, I like your necklace.
That's awesome. So I'm really liking seeing how we're taking the importance of symbolism in magic and translating it to our modern practices as well, because it just goes to show you how important of a concept it is, and how much our little human brains are drawn to symbols.
Right.
But But thank you so much for joining me for this
You're welcome.
and bearing with me throughout, the struggles and the chaos crew of getting it up and started. But
I mean,
this was a lot
I
of
didn't
fun.
I didn't expect I'd be able to like pull the weight of us technologically. My husband will be proud of me.
Yeah, I like to think I've absorbed some through the years, like through osmosis of living with an IT guy, but
Same here.
this was still like a whole new world for me. I've only been doing live streams for a while, and that, let alone one with somebody else. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for letting
You're
me chit chat with
welcome.
you about this. This was a lot of fun.
It's nice to finally talk to you.
Yeah, right? I can't wait to actually meet you in person one of these days.
Oh, you
Then I
will.
started watching your video, and like I said, I would see like the Sailor Moon things in the background and be like,
Tell me a
yes,
Sailor Moon blanket, like right there.
kindred spirits.
Yes.
So, yes, hopefully we'll actually get to do some witchy stuff together in person soon.
Oh, hell yeah.
Definitely looking forward to it. And hey, if you ever want to reciprocate and bring me on your channel to ramble
I
about
would love
something,
to. Yeah, I
we
would love
can,
to.
yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
definitely down to collaborate again in the future.
I think it'd be really fun to talk about Freya, considering we both work with her. So that
Yeah,
might
I
be a
know.
fun thing
Yeah, I
to
feel like I haven't
do.
talked about her specifically in a long time, so I would definitely love to do that and
Yeah.
give her some more attention because she's so worth
Mhm.
it. And that would be a good idea because coming up at the end of August, like beginning of September, is when I met her for the first time. So I'm
Oh,
kind of
maybe we
coming up on
can
like my anniversary of meeting Freya and becoming Norse pagan. So
maybe we
I
can
think
shoot for that then. That might be a good idea.
yeah, we should totally regroup at the end of the month and
Yeah, I'm
have a
for
little
it.
Freya chat. But yeah, I think we can leave this off here and I'll let you go about your evening.
Sounds
But
good.
this was a lot of
It
fun.
was fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I liked our little night owl chat
Oh,
because
yeah,
yes,
that's
I am
sweet.
definitely a night owl as well. So,
Mhm.
but yes, I look forward to chatting with you more in the future.
Yes, I do. I do as well with you.
All right. Have a good night. Good
You
night,
too.
everybody out
Good
there in YouTube
night,
land. Thank you for joining.
everybody.
Stay
Bye.
classy, pagans.